Throughout history, there have always been books created to guide us, books written to teach us, to heal, to inspire. But then, there are books that were never meant for human hands. Books that were written in secrecy, passed down in whispers, hidden away in shadows. The Black Book of Cyprian is one of them, perhaps the most infamous of them all. A grimoire surrounded by mystery, fear, and countless warnings. In the world of the occult, few names carry the weight of Cyprian's. His book is not like the grimoires of ceremonial magicians, filled with orderly rituals or angelic invocations. No, the Book of Cyprian is different. It was never meant to be shared openly. It was never meant for public hands. Across Portugal, Spain, and even Scandinavia, versions of this cursed text appear like ghosts in history, fragments of something far older and far darker. What makes it truly terrifying is not just the spells it holds, it's the way the book behaves. Stories passed down through rural villages tell of pages that shift and change depending on the reader. For some, the book opens to promises of wealth beyond imagination. For others, it reveals rituals of binding spirits, summoning demons, or invoking the dead. And for a few unfortunate souls, the book has shown them their deepest fears, spells they never wanted to know, curses that could never be undone. It is a book that does not merely record magic, it hunts for something within the reader. Desire, greed, curiosity, fear. Whatever lives inside you, the Book of Cyprian will find it. And throughout the centuries, one thing has remained terrifyingly consistent. Those who went searching for this book often returned changed, if they returned at all. Long before Cyprian was ever called a saint, before his name was carved into the walls of ancient churches or whispered in prayers for protection, he was something else entirely. A sorcerer, a man of forbidden knowledge, and perhaps something worse. Cyprian's origins are cloaked in as much mystery as the book itself. According to legend, he was born in Antioch, an ancient city of learning, trade, and dangerous secrets. But what set him apart from ordinary men was not just his thirst for knowledge. It was where he chose to seek it. As a young man, Cyprian was said to have traveled far beyond the borders of his homeland, seeking out teachers few dared approach. He studied in Babylon, a place known for its ancient rituals and forgotten gods. He is said to have wandered Egypt, where priests of old guarded wisdom written in forgotten tongues, spells carved into stone, curses buried with the dead. But his journey didn't stop there. Some stories claim he ventured deep into the remote forests of Thrace, where witches and pagan priests worshipped spirits older than memory. In these wild places, Cyprian learned the art of necromancy, the practice of communicating with and commanding the dead. He learned how to bind spirits to objects, how to curse enemies from miles away, and most dangerously, how to summon demons. But it was not just the power that fascinated him. It was the recording of it. Cyprian, they say, was meticulous. He wrote everything down, not in one book, but in many. His private grimoires were said to hold rituals of such potency that even seasoned magicians feared to read them. And it was from these scattered writings that the Book of Cyprian was born. Yet something changed in him later in life, or so the legend claims. According to Christian hagiography, Cyprian eventually renounced his dark practices, converting to Christianity and becoming a bishop. The story tells of him burning his books, casting aside his knowledge of the dark arts and embracing the light. But folk legends, the stories whispered in rural villages, far from the polished halls of churches, tell a different version. They say Cyprian never destroyed his knowledge. They say he merely hid it. The Book of Cyprian is not a relic of sainthood. It is the final, terrifying legacy of a sorcerer who knew too much and left behind a guide for those willing to risk everything. But the danger of the book is not merely in its existence, it is in its contents. And what lies within is unlike any grimoire the world has ever known. To understand the true terror of the Book of Cyprian, we must step beyond the legends and look at what lies within its cursed pages. This is not a book of simple charms or harmless superstitions. The Book of Cyprian is a labyrinth of rituals, spells, and invocations, many of which are believed to be too dangerous to perform, even by the most experienced practitioners of magic. The contents of the book vary wildly from region to region. There is no single true version of the text, a fact that only deepens the mystery surrounding it. In Portugal, the most infamous version is known as Livro de São Cipriano, the Book of Saint Cyprian. It has circulated in rural communities for centuries, often passed down through families like a cursed heirloom. To own a copy was both a blessing and a curse. Farmers, shepherds, and fishermen believed the book held spells to protect their homes, to find hidden treasure, to heal sickness, but always at a price. One of the most notorious sections is the chapter dedicated to treasure hunting spells. These rituals often required elaborate preparations, circles drawn with blood, specific prayers spoken at midnight, offerings left at crossroads, and sometimes even deals struck with infernal entities. But what makes these spells particularly horrifying is the detail in which they are written. Instructions on how to summon a guardian spirit of the treasure, often a demon or the restless ghost of a murdered soul, and how to bargain with it without losing your life or your soul. Another chapter deals with love binding, spells designed to force the will of another to bend to your desire. But these were never romantic charms. They were spells of obsession, of control, of enslavement. The book warned that once bound, the victim would suffer madness if separated from their captor. And in some stories, these rituals ended in tragedy, with both victim and practitioner driven to ruin. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Book of Cyprian lies in its summoning rituals. The book speaks of calling forth demons, not as distant symbols or abstract forces, but as living entities that must be bound, controlled, and satisfied. The invocations are detailed, often requiring specific ingredients nearly impossible to find. The bone of a murdered man, the blood of an animal killed at a crossroads, earth taken from a grave at midnight. Yet every version of the book carries a warning. The spirits summoned by these rituals are ancient and cunning. They are bound only for as long as the ritual holds. The slightest mistake, the smallest error in pronunciation or preparation can free the entity, and once free there is no binding it again. Oh, but not all the contents of the book are overtly malicious. Some sections deal with healing, spells to cure illness, to protect against curses, or to ward off evil spirits. However, even these spells come with warnings. Power drawn from the book comes at a cost. Healing one life may require harming another. Protection in one realm may invite danger from another. It is this balance, or imbalance, of power that makes the Book of Cyprian so feared. It does not hide the price of its magic. It demands payment, and often the price is steep. But perhaps most disturbing of all is the legend that the book itself chooses what to reveal. Some claim that when you open the Book of Cyprian, the pages shift beneath your fingers. What one reader sees, another may never find. Spells of wealth may appear to the greedy. Spells of vengeance may appear to the angry. And to those who approach the book out of idle curiosity, well, they may find something entirely unexpected staring back at them. What's clear is this: the Book of Cyprian is no ordinary grimoire. It is a living artifact of power, of danger, and of temptation. And many who read it, or even seek it, never return the same. The Book of Cyprian did not stay buried in Antioch. Its legend spread across Europe, mutating and evolving with every border it crossed. In Portugal, as I've mentioned, it became deeply rooted in folk tradition. The Portuguese Livro de São Cipriano is often found in rural homes, sometimes hidden beneath floorboards, wrapped in cloth, or sealed in boxes of salt and iron. Even those who never open it keep it close, believing it to offer protection merely by its presence. But no one keeps it on display. The book is hidden, feared, respected, and sometimes blamed for misfortune when strange things begin to happen. In Spain, the Book of Cyprian takes on a slightly different flavor. Here, the text leans more into exorcism and protection spells, prayers to drive out demons, rituals to cleanse homes of evil spirits, and methods of breaking curses. Yet even in these versions, there are hints of darker knowledge, spells hidden between the lines, rituals disguised as prayers. But the most sinister versions of the book are found further north. In Scandinavia, Cyprian is not remembered as a saint. He is seen more as a sorcerer, or even as a figure of darkness. In Norwegian and Swedish folklore, grimoires attributed to Cyprian contain dangerous traps. Prayers that appear holy, but twist your fate when spoken aloud. Rituals that promise safety, but invite ruin. In these versions, the book is not merely a tool, it is an entity in itself, a cursed object that cannot be owned without consequence. Some legends claim that once a copy of the Book of Cyprian enters your home, it will never truly leave. Destroying it is impossible. Burning it only invites disaster. The only way to rid yourself of the book is to pass it on. But doing so means passing the curse to another. And so, in quiet villages and forgotten towns, the book continues its journey, moving from hand to hand, from family to family, always waiting, always watching. The true terror of the Book of Cyprian isn't just found in its pages. It's found in the stories left behind by those who dared to use it. Across Europe, strange tales linger like cobwebs in forgotten corners of history. These are not the grand stories of kings or saints. These are quiet stories, local legends passed down by word of mouth. And they all carry the same warning. The Book of Cyprian always takes more than it gives. One of the most famous stories comes from rural Portugal, where an old farmer was said to have owned a battered copy of the book. He never spoke of where he found it, only that it had been passed down from his grandfather, who had warned him never to open it unless there was no other choice. But temptation is a powerful thing. Years of drought had ruined the man's crops. His animals grew sick, his family was starving. And so, one night, under a new moon, he opened the book. The spell he chose was simple, a ritual to find buried treasure. The instructions were clear, though disturbingly precise. He was to draw a circle of salt in the field, offer a drop of his own blood, and whisper an invocation to whatever spirit guarded the land. What happened next was never fully explained, only that days later his fields flourished with impossible speed. Crops grew tall and thick, his animals recovered, and buried beneath an old tree, he discovered a chest of gold coins. But fortune comes at a price. Not long after, strange things began to happen. Shadows moved where there should have been none. Animals refused to enter his field at night. Whispers echoed through the house after sunset. And worst of all, his family began to change. His wife fell ill with a sickness no doctor could identify. His son went missing in the woods for days, returning pale and frightened, unable to speak of what he had seen. In desperation, the farmer tried to undo the ritual, but the book offered no instructions for undoing what had been set in motion. Some say he went mad. Others say he vanished one night, leaving the book behind. And those who found it later swore they could hear scratching sounds from within its pages, like something trapped, waiting. This is not an isolated story. In Spain, tales circulate of a priest who attempted to use the Book of Cyprian to perform an exorcism on a young woman believed to be possessed. The ritual worked. The spirit left her body. But the priest was never seen again. His belongings were later found undisturbed in his home, except for one thing. The Book of Cyprian sat open on his desk. Its pages were blank. In Scandinavia, a fisherman was said to have used the book to calm a violent storm at sea. He survived, but his shipmates claimed he spoke in a voice that was not his own for days after. When he finally returned to land, he refused to speak of what he had done, burned his boat to ashes, and disappeared into the northern forests, leaving nothing behind. These are the stories people remember, not because they are grand or heroic, but because they feel dangerously close to something real, something possible. And while the versions differ, the locations, the details, the warning is always the same. The Book of Cyprian does not simply grant wishes, it offers a bargain. And it always collects its debt. You might wonder, if the Book of Cyprian is so dangerous, why wasn't it destroyed? Why hasn't it been erased from history? But this is the nature of forbidden knowledge. The things we are told to fear often become the things we desire most. For some, the book represents ultimate control over spirits, over fate, over life and death itself. The temptation to possess such power is ancient. It speaks to something deep within us, a hunger to master the unknown, to bend the world to our will. For others, the book is a symbol of rebellion, a challenge to authority, to religious control, to the boundaries of what is considered acceptable or safe. To own the Book of Cyprian is to step outside of ordinary reality, to brush against the supernatural, to exist on the edge of darkness. And for a few, the book is an obsession. Collectors of rare grimoires, occult scholars, and secret societies have hunted for authentic copies of the Book of Cyprian for centuries. Some claim to possess fragments. Others believe the true book has never been found, that it lies hidden in some forgotten monastery or sealed beneath an ancient church, waiting for the one foolish enough to claim it. But there is one final reason the book survives: fear. The Book of Cyprian is not merely an object of desire, it is an object of terror. Even those who never open its pages keep it close, believing it to offer protection. Better to possess the power and never use it than to leave it for another to find. Because in the world of the occult, power left unclaimed is power that waits, watching, whispering, until someone else reaches for it. In the end, the story of the Book of Cyprian is more than just the tale of an ancient grimoire. It's a reflection of human nature itself, of our endless fascination with the forbidden, our hunger for knowledge we were never meant to possess, and our foolish belief that we can control forces older and darker than we understand. For centuries, the book has moved silently through the world, across continents, across cultures. It has changed names, changed forms, adapted itself to new languages and beliefs. But it has never vanished. That, perhaps, is the most chilling part of its legacy. Many believe the book was never intended for human hands, that it is not merely a collection of spells or rituals, but a spiritual trap, a test of will and wisdom. The stories surrounding the book always follow the same pattern. Those who approach it with greed, with arrogance, or with desperation often meet ruin, but those who approach it with respect, or better yet avoid it altogether, tend to survive. There are scholars who argue that the Book of Cyprian is nothing more than a folk legend, a superstition passed down by fearful villagers to warn against meddling in the unknown. But even these scholars hesitate to dismiss the stories entirely. After all, legends endure for a reason. They survive because they speak to a truth deeper than history books can hold. And then, there are those who believe the book is very real, that it continues to exist, scattered in fragments across the world. Some copies might sit unnoticed on the shelves of old libraries, others might lie buried in forgotten tombs, and a very few, may still be in the possession of secret practitioners of the old arts. But the real question is not whether the book exists. The real question is whether it should ever be read. There is an old saying in occult circles: some doors were never meant to be opened, some names were never meant to be spoken, and some knowledge was never meant to be known. The Book of Cyprian embodies this warning. It is a doorway, and not all who pass through it return. Perhaps the greatest wisdom is not in mastering the rituals within its pages, but in knowing when to walk away, because power always has a price, and the Book of Cyprian never forgets a debt. So tell me, would you read it? Would you open its pages and risk everything for what lies inside, or would you leave it buried, forgotten, and untouched, where some say it belongs? Let me know what you think in the comments, but be careful what you wish for. Some books are always listening. If you liked the video, do like and subscribe, as it will help me grow and enable me to make much more interesting videos in the future.